We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live. Boxingego unpack. Yeah. We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live.
What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Terence Crawford will not fight Jaron Boots Ennis because he could do all of the same things. There's a brand new article. We're going to jump right into it. This article says that Crawford won't actually fight against Jaron Ennis because he does pretty much the same things.
Crawford won't fight Ennis because he can do everything Bud can. Las Vegas, Nevada, September 13.
Wow.
Coach Greg Hackett says Jaron Boots Ennis is the best fight out there for Terence Crawford, competitive-wise. But he states that Crawford 42-0, 31 KOs, isn't looking at Ennis as a potential foe because he's above him. Fighting the 28-year-old Ennis 34-0, 30 KOs, who can do everything that Crawford can do, but is younger, would be a risky move for him. The Mount Rushmore myth. Turki Alalshik is giving Crawford massive amounts of money in fights that he's certain he'll win going into them. That certainty wouldn't be there for the 38-year-old Crawford if he fought Boots. He could lose.
So basically, they're saying that the Boots fight would be a dangerous one for Terence Crawford. Let me know if you agree with that in the comment section. Let's keep it going. Keep it going.
Not only would that undermine Terence's claims of deserving to be in the Mount Rushmore of boxing as one of the 4 all-time greats, but it could also cause him to get a dramatic pay cut for the few remaining fights he has in his career. All-time great? Not even close. As it is, the Rushmore stuff that Crawford has been talking about is silly because he doesn't have the resume to be among the all-time greats, not even at the bottom 10. Beating Canelo Alvarez and Errol Spence Jr. isn't good enough, especially for a fighter who only fights once a year. You must be active, in addition to possessing a strong resume, to make it a Mount Rushmore. Boots has the tools. When it comes to skill set.
Now, let's go right. Let's go with that Mount Rushmore. Crawford is great. He's this generation's talent. I have no problem saying that. But Mount Rushmore, like, I don't see it. And I'm not shading Bud. I'm just being, we got to keep it real, bro. I don't see how you're Mount, like, boxing is hundreds of years, centuries of boxing history. Jack Johnson, Ray Robinson, Ray Leonard, Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao, Julio Cesar Chavez, Sr., of course not Junior. We're not talking about Junior. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know how Bud really stacks up. I told you, Bud is a late bloomer, meaning he made questionable choices early on in his career, and now he's trying to make good in the back half. But the thing is, this is just facts. You fought Errol Spence after the accident. It's not your fault Errol Spence was drinking and driving. I get it. But the reality is he was injured, detached retinas. I mean, that's why he didn't fight Pacquiao, right? Errol Spence was injured, coming off injuries, out the ring at least a year. Crawford got a tune-up in David Avocado, and then he does a masterful performance against Errol. But again, I didn't make Crawford's resume. It's just this is how it's played out for him. And now Canelo, and I'm not saying anything new that I haven't already said. The reality is Canelo Alvarez, he looked horrible. He was coming off a Williams School fight where he looked horrible in that particular fight. That's the reality. And I said all of that in real time. But let's keep going.
Skill set, power, speed. When it comes to skill set, power, speed, athleticism, and reflexes, when you look around, Boots is the closest thing to it, said trainer Greg Hackett to Mill City Boxing about Jaron Boots Ennis being the most competitive fight for Terence Crawford. Ennis built to dethrone Crawford. Ennis has the physical tools.
Now, I don't know about the most competitive, but I mean, it's possible. Boots is big. But I also think Murtazaev, there's a lot of fights that are like good and dangerous if we're really being real.
Tools, youth. Ennis has the physical tools, youth, and overall game to defeat Crawford to replace him on the pound-for-pound list. Boots promoter Eddie Hearn already recognizes that he's ready to defeat Crawford to take his spot. That's why he's pushing so hard for that fight and talking up a storm about Jaron knocking Crawford off his throne. Bud's eyes were somewhere else. Ennis is looking up. Bud, because he's already above him ranking-wise, I'm not looking at you. He don't want nobody to beat him, said Hackett about Crawford's coach Bernie Davis, who has been dismissive of Boots Ennis as a potential opponent for Terence. Hackett sees through the excuses. Hackett can see through Bernie the boxer Davis, and he understands what's behind him not wanting Crawford to fight Ennis. He knows what'll happen, and he wants to avoid that.
So this article is alleging that Bud knows what's in store if he fights Boots, and he don't like that. I mean, I want you guys to answer this. I don't really have too much of a thought. Like, I have thoughts, but here's the thing. My thing is this. I was one of the main people who wanted to see Crawford versus Boots. But per usual, boxing continues to do this to its fans and treats the fans bad because they'll give you a fight. Boxing just won't give you the fight when you ask for it, right? When you wanted to fight, it don't happen more often than not. And then they'll do like what they did with Amir Khan and Kell Brook. So basically, realistically, right? And they were arguing online. It was one of the biggest fights in the UK. Oh yeah, mate, you're slagging him, mate. Right? Could have been a huge fight. Probably would have set records for biggest UK fights if Kell Brook and Amir Khan fought when it made sense. But they waited. Boxing waited. And then before you knew it, Kell Brook's no longer undefeated. Amir Khan hadn't been undefeated for a minute because, you know, Bradis Prescott knocked him out. So there were some flaws that were shown there. But at least Kell Brook was undefeated. And before you know it, he loses to Triple G and then back-to-back with Errol Spence before the accident. You dig? So we got the fight, but it was like 8 to 10 years after its sell-by date. You know what I mean? So boxing continues to do this. I was one of the main people on this platform or any platform pushing for Crawford and Jaron Ennis. But now so much time has elapsed. Crawford just went up and beat Canelo. Now I don't really see the fight happening because just think about what I'm saying. Hear me out. Just hear me out. If they were going to fight and Crawford was at 147, moved to 154 for one fight, Boots is now at 54. So he was right there, like kind of on his bumper on his heels. But then Crawford moves out of that division and goes all the way to 68 to fight a fledgling, like older Canelo, does good. And then now he's in Japan. You know what I mean? I posted it on my social media. Now you're not going to be able to tell Crawford anything. So to be honest, Crawford's a great fighter, but he moves strategic and Turkey allowed for this to happen. And now that's the reality, because here's the reality of it. There were harder fights than the Canelo fight available for Crawford. The downside is they wouldn't have paid like the Canelo fight. They didn't have the namesake of a Canelo. So Crawford finding the way in with Turkey, he shot straight for the top. Turkey pushed and made it happen. And then the rest is history. Now, I feel like Crawford, the way he played it and the way the game allowed for it to happen, now Crawford would be looking backwards to go fight Jaron Ennis. And I'm keeping it fair to both fighters because I am a fan of both fighters. I don't care if they were to fight, I would just be watching it as a fan. But there's some truth to the article. Boots is similar in, you know, certain regards. The only downside for Boots is that Boots doesn't have a leg to stand on, especially with Crawford fighting his biggest names, Errol Spence and Canelo, despite I explain the circumstances of where those guys were when he fought, but he still fought him and he did his thing and he showed up in a major way and really made the fights not look competitive. Jaron Boots Ennis has never fought an Errol Spence, just the name, let alone, he's never had that type of event. He never fought a Canelo. So I know the fans and trainers and people are like pushing for this fight. I do not see it happening. I think Crawford has had his ups and downs, not really from career-wise. He didn't lose or anything like that. But the reality is Terence Crawford feels like the business, outcasted him and beat him up. So now he's doing the same thing. And, he's like, I'm about myself. I'm about my family. I'm about my bread. Get my business right. So now he's looking like to make, I'm not saying every fighter, but most fighters do this, right? Canelo, he was the B-side to Floyd. He was the B-side to Cotto, right? But after that, even though he only beat Cotto and didn't beat Floyd, he still became immensely popular. And I think Canelo was like, those days are over. I'm not being the B-side anymore. I'm the guy putting butts in seats. So then Canelo started doing whatever he wanted. He wouldn't fight dangerous mandatories like Demetrius Boo Boo Andrade, Jermall Charlo at 160 before his hiatus of mental health stuff. And then he would kind of pick and choose. And guys like David Benavidez were barking up the tree. He didn't give him a look. But then he'll give Jaime Munguia and Berlanga a look. You know what I mean? And now Crawford's kind of in that bag too, where he's like, I earned it. I'm a guy that didn't really get the respect earlier in my career from some people, and the business wasn't kind. So now he's lashing out, and in my opinion, and Terence Crawford is just looking at it like, no, I get to call the shots. So long story short, that leaves Boots, up Ish Creek, because Boots doesn't have the names. They're going to play you. Like the game of boxing is crazy. It's crazy because, to be honest, a lot of what Crawford has complained about, he's kind of doing to Boots Ennis right now, right? What do I mean? So when Crawford resume was even thinner, right? Thinner. Stephen King book. Thinner. Right? His resume was thin, and he didn't have like the guys with namesake. He didn't have like big, colossal names with Top Rank. He chose that though. And he re-signed with Top Rank. But that they were giving him, just like Shakur Stevenson. Shakur Stevenson left Top Rank. He probably got his biggest fight, William Zepeda, after leaving Top Rank. Top Rank kind of gets you to a certain spot. And then after, it's like they can't put you over to make you a superstar, except for, Pacquiao. But Pacquiao, certain guys like that come through and they were just always going to break the mold. You know what I mean? They like Pacquiao wasn't going to be denied. The Philippines, they don't have no big superstars like Pacquiao. You know what I mean? So I think Pacquiao would have did his thing if Nickelodeon was promoting him. Pee Wee Herman could have promoted him and he would have still had a following. And he could fight. You know what I mean? But anyway, Bud, for Bud's sake, he couldn't get Keith Thurman, Danny Garcia. He couldn't get Errol Spence when he said he wanted him. Blase blah. And then he said, the PBC and Al Heyman and the fans, they were making excuses and putting up roadblocks and blah, blah, blah. But now his team is doing the same thing. Bernie is doing an interview with Mill City Boxing talking about Crawford needs $100 million to fight Janabex and Lada and guys like that, or he might ride off into the sunset. Boots, Virgil Ortiz, Crawford's like, we gave these guys an opportunity. Even if that's true, even if you gave them an opportunity, right? That's boxing. Floyd gave Pacquiao an opportunity. He didn't want to take the test. Floyd then gave Pacquiao another opportunity, and Pacquiao hung up the phone because he didn't like the monetary, offer. But then they still later fought. But part of this article, the part that's true is that Boots is talented and he can do some of the same things that Crawford can do. And the other thing is that it would be a dangerous fight. I do think it'll be a dangerous fight. You know, this is not a fight prediction, but you know, I just feel for Boots' sake, he's not in the driver's seat, so they're not going to give him the look. Period. They're not going to give him the look. And, you know, the way Eddie Hearn is moving him is not much different than how Crawford was being moved. And then the same rules apply for Crawford when he was with Top Rank, meaning fighting Mean Machine and stuff like that, fighting guys like Thomas Delorme, that it just wasn't like star building. And Boots is in that same stage of his career. Now he says he has a surprise announcement. We'll see what that is. But Boots is starving, thirsty for a big name and a big fight because, again, with Crawford going through Errol Spence, even though, you know, the situation was what it was, and going through Canelo, even though the situation was what it was, he still performed. And as a fighter, that's all you can ask of a fighter. They did their part. Crawford can't be concerned if Errol went through a car wreck or detached retina, even though it's the truth. That's not his concern. Like, he didn't do that to Errol, right? Same thing with Canelo. If he's washed and didn't look good versus Skull, Crawford bulked up, moved all the weight, took the risk, and washed Canelo. You know what I mean? So you can't really fault Bud, but it's just more politics, I guess you will. More politics. And because of that, everything I'm hearing from Crawford's side and Crawford's team, they're not giving Boots an opportunity, bruh. I don't see it. Because again, he was just at 54 and Boots shortly followed after that. That would have been the best time to make the fight. But now he's at 168. He says, I can't make 54 now. He's pushing 40, got gray hairs in his beard, just beat Canelo. It's not happening, bruh. So I don't know how many more videos I got to make like this. I seen the article was sent to me, you know what I mean? So I guess it's a topic some of you guys still want to talk about. But to me, it's already a dead issue. They're not fighting. Again, I was one of the main people that pushed for the fight. I just, for my channel's sake and my mental health, I don't like to waste time. And nothing indicates that this fight will happen. To be honest, it made more sense if Crawford stayed at 54 and didn't fight Canelo. Now that he fought Canelo, because he moved up in weight, fought at a higher weight class, and then on top of that, he had a great performance with a big Hall of Fame name. Now you can't tell him nothing. You know what I mean? You're not going to be able to tell Crawford, like, oh, go backwards and fight Boots, whose resume is not good. You know what I mean? I keep it fair. I told you Crawford's resume was thin earlier in his career, and now Boots is in that same spot. And Crawford's team, you know, people, they're kind of doing what was done to them. And that's kind of what happens in life. Like, you have somebody where their dad spanked them with a belt, and then later on, that's what they came up under that regime. So later on, that person has kids, maybe they spank their own kids. You see what I'm saying? Life is cyclical like that. And now Crawford's in his bag. He had to come up how he came up, earn it his way, and now he not given no opportunities and looks unless it makes sense for him too. So yeah, we unpacked. I don't see Boots and Bud happening. There was like a small window and it didn't happen in there. So now I think it's a wrap. That's my honest opinion. We unpacked. For more boxing news, I got y'all subscribe. I got y'all when it comes to boxing news. I'll break it down. Use my link to get StreamYard, vidIQ, and TubeBuddy. The links are in the description. If you want to, the best time to join YouTube was 10 years ago. The second best time to join YouTube is right now. If you want to make money online, like your boy Ego, use my links. They're down in the description. Shout out to everybody for the cash apps and super chats. I'm going to keep cooking. We unpack. Live streaming can be tough, which is why I use StreamYard. Click the link in the description for StreamYard, which is an awesome tool that enables you to set up your stream with ease of use. Get great results with live streaming. It's what I use. Stream to social media with ease with StreamYard. Live streaming is here to stay. Engage with your audience using StreamYard. Great way to reach out to your audience and connect. So you need a tool that can do that. If you're new to YouTube and you're struggling to get views, one tool I can provide to you is TubeBuddy. I've been on YouTube over 10 years. I use TubeBuddy daily to crank out videos just like this one that you're watching. Learn how the pros do it with TubeBuddy. YouTube receives a lot of traffic, which also means a lot of creators, a lot of people putting out content. So you need to learn the ropes so you know how to separate yourself, especially if you're new, but even if you're a pro, use TubeBuddy. The link is in the description. Get more views, more subscribers, and a higher click-through rate, so ultimately you can realize all of your online goals. Use my affiliate link in the description and grow your channel fast.